Well, as Nigeria focuses on improving the ease of doing business, access to credit has been identified as one of the indices impacting on the ability or to be one of the destinations of choice for investments. The Credit Report Act of 2017 addresses some of the deficiencies by providing one of the pillars on which access to credit rests. With many developing countries, an all-inclusive access to affordable finance and credit, well, of course, is still a challenge. And countries like Nigeria, well, particularly to women, rural dwellers, and of course, MSMEs. According to a recent report by the National Bureau of Statistics, SMEs in Nigeria have contributed about 48% of the national GDP in the last 5 years. With 17.4 million, they account for 84 million of employment and nearly 90% of the manufacturing sector regarding the number of enterprises. Thus, the industry has over time grown to become an indispensable part of the economy. In order to strengthen access to finance to businesses in Nigeria, most especially MSMEs, it is imperative that the financial institutions are encouraged to create credit to enable individuals and businesses to meet their obligations, thereby creating value and, of course, wealth. Well, to give more insight into this and much of our discussion today, he's the chairman, Credit Bureau Association of Nigeria, Siban, and also a managing director and chief executive officer of CRC Credit Bureau Limited. He's Dr. Tunde Pokpola. Dr. Pokpola, good afternoon and thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. Nice to be here.
Yes,
and good afternoon, viewers at home.
Yes, it's really great to have you in our studio. I think this is the first time you're having you on Business Nigeria. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. Let's start with you being the current chairman of Siban. Many people will say they don't even understand what Siban really stands for. Can you take us through what it means and what you stand for as an association?
Thank you very much. So Siban means Credit Bureau Association of Nigeria. In around 2009 or so, the central bank licensed 3 credit bureaus to operate in Nigeria as private credit bureau operators. And we thought that as a new industry, there's a need for us to come together and form an association, which we did in 2012, to be able to promote access to credit in Nigeria. So Siban's major focus as a non-governmental organization, a not-for-profit, established by the 3 licensed credit bureaus, is to strengthen access to credit in Nigeria, especially for consumers and small, micro, small, medium enterprises. So we look at things that can make us to deepen access to credit, things that can make life easy for credit grantors, and then suppliers of credit, as well as consumers of credit. And of course, to promote advocacy and deepen capacity in this new sector called credit reporting in Nigeria. So those are the major, focus that we have set for ourselves. How do we deepen capacity of people? How do we encourage and deepen awareness about credit and what credit can do? What can we do about responsible lending and responsible borrowing? And how can we encourage and facilitate access to credit for creditors and credit grantors generally, so that they can, begin to lend with high level of information and lend with confidence, and be able to then address all these challenges that we have about they don't know the consumers, they don't know the SMEs, they don't know you and me. So that association is an umbrella association for the 3 credit bureaus, and it comes together to synergize and see how we can take this access to credit for overall objective of improving access to credit and grow our economy as it should be grown.
I like that. Now, being the chairman, it's a very good way to start this discussion. Being the chairman of Siban and, of course, CEO of one of the bureaus here. Now, what has been your personal focus, and what do you really intend to, how do you intend to change what's been on ground? Many people would like to say, we'll consolidate on what's been on ground. Yeah. But what are you doing differently, your focus and objective being looking at your time in office?
Okay, so it's good to start from the fact that, when we started as a sector, as an industry, we received tremendous support from the Central Bank of Nigeria and the World Bank through the International Finance Corporation, IFC. At least they helped us to build capacity, to help us to talk to the financial institutions that they regulate, to help us to do some level of training, and of course to create some level of awareness for the players in that sector. Okay, so now as a BMO, as a business management organizations, the issue is how do we take that further, and who are the critical stakeholders that we need to address to be able to ensure that they have access to credit, they get credit at the best rate, and they are involved in responsible borrowing. So those are the critical areas for our advocacy. Those are the critical areas for building the capacity of the segments of the population that we deal with. So we've been doing a lot of conferences, a lot of seminars, a lot of advertisement, and so on and so forth in the media, through the BMOs. We've had engagement and partner with MSMEs, NACI, and all those organizations. Okay, so to deepen to encourage them and let them see the importance of credit and how to really go about credit. Now, so what do we want to do? We are in a new era, and everybody is talking about new normal. And so our job now, my chairmanship for this year, will focus on deepening the initiative we started, especially focusing on the micro, small, and medium enterprises. Now, we know the challenges of MSMEs in Nigeria. I mean, people talk about electricity. When you are giving the news, you talked about it, and the World Bank talked about it. But when you ask any MSME owner or founder or manager, finance remains number one. Access to finance. In spite of all the government efforts and activities, finance still remains number one. Yes. And then banks like BOI and Central Bank will tell you that the bank, the funds are available, but the MSMEs are not taking it. So there's a gap. That gap is about capacity. So what Siban tends to do during my 1 year is to see how we can enhance the capacity of MSMEs to be able to take on, funds that they desperately need, because you said it, they are the engine of this economy. 48% of GDP is not a joke. At all. I mean, over 47 million MSMEs, and less than 10% of them have access to credit as we speak today. So how can we move that to a situation where 20%, 30%, how can we deepen access to credit for them? What are those gaps that we have seen in terms of keeping records, in terms of knowledge, in terms of information, access to information, in terms of structure that they need to put? Because these are things that they must have if they really want to have access to credit. And so we'll be making we'll do a lot of awareness creation, we'll be doing a lot of capacity building, we'll be deepening our engagement with that sector of the economy, so that at the end of the day, even if it's just an incremental growth that we can see in the number of MSMEs that have access to credit, that will enhance their capacity. And once they have access to credit, it will enhance production and productive activities. And of course, even for the suppliers of credit, it becomes easier for them to lend. And it will reduce the level of non-performing loans that they will be exposed to, because capacity is being developed, for those who are beneficiaries of such loans and advances. Very
interesting. You made a very salient point there, talking about the CBN. You see many times they come out and say 500 million is available, 500 billion is available. And after some years, you hear just 30% of that money has been accessed. 40% has been accessed. Some people will even say they don't know much about it. So it's really, your role really, it's critical when you talk about this. Now let's talk about the big COVID-19, and that has affected the whole world. It affected even us here as a media house, and all kind of businesses, and the effect. So the credit bureaus cannot be insulated in all of this. Now tell us, how did it affect the whole entire business activities in almost like a year now?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting question. Bureaus are purveyors of data. We are repositories of data, credit data. We have access to all the credit data in the country, and we make such data available to the users of such information, especially financial institutions and other credit grantors. Now, so when COVID started, there was a significant impact on consumers. Okay. Most of them could not even go out. Okay. And then, of course, the lenders themselves, even as we speak today, some banks still have not opened up all their branches. So how do we support them as credit bureaus to still have access to that data that they need to grant credit? How do we support consumers of loans and MSMEs to still have access to credit? That's what came to our mind when the issue of COVID started. And so we have to go back to the drawing board and see, so how do we digitalize our operations? So digitalization using technology, especially through APIs, for institutions to be able to submit data and to be able to access those data become the primary thing that we have to do. Okay, for my own company, for instance, introduce CRC Mobile, which is an app that you can download on Android or iOS to, look at your credit report and look at your credit score. So you don't need to leave your house. You don't need to go anywhere to be able to do that. So financial institutions also now have APIs that they just, link up to us and have live, connection to access data and to also submit their information. So they don't need to be in their offices. Once they can have access to their data, then they can submit those data to us through APIs. And once they can also define and design access to, granting loans that does not require physical presence of their customers, which most of them are doing now.
Wow.
A lot of digital lending, it's going on. People access funds through their phones, on their laptops, everywhere today. Why is that possible? Because the bureaus are there to support them to have access to very credible third-party neutral information that can tell them about what is going on. So we did all of that, and it also supports government in all these intervention funds to have access to data, relevant data about who are those who are already enjoying credit. For instance, if government doesn't want to give those who are already enjoying credit, you have a list of those who are already enjoying credit that you can see in one place through the credit bureau. Okay? And if some of them have been enjoying credit before it's not been performing well, you also have such information from a third party. So we try to close that gap in a very scientific way. Using digitalization, using technology, to make such information available, either to government or to lenders themselves. And then, of course, it also gave the opportunity to borrowers themselves to have access to their own credit information, because it's always good for you to examine yourself.
Yes, so
before you say you are applying for loans. So, am I doing well?
That's true.
Do I have a loan that I've not, serviced in the past? What's my credit scores? These are things that lenders will look at before they give you a new loan. Do you have capacity? Do you have the willingness, really, to really repay your loans? And so all of those come, handy during this COVID, so we just deepen our use of technology to enable lenders generally to be able to do what they are supposed to be doing.
Of course, I'm not surprised that the ICT sector is doing very well now. Almost all sectors leveraged on ICT technology at that time. Even the media, we were all on Skypes and Zoom calls and all of that. Let's now talk about the credit reporting system itself. I tried to read about this, but for a professional and player like you, it will be more explicit hearing from you. Take us through what it means and how it can impact the economy.
Beautiful. So the credit reporting system is an infrastructure, a financial infrastructure. Just like in transportation, you have roads, you have railways, you have all manner of road infrastructure, transportation infrastructure. Yeah. So a credit reporting system is a credit infrastructure that supports lending, that makes lending so easy to do. So we all talk about, banks were not lending. They were not lending. We couldn't get access to loan. But banks need information to lend. They want to know you. They want to know me. Who is Tunde Popola? Who is Steve Easy? That's the only way, if they have information. So what the credit reporting system does is to provide those information. So it's a repository of data of credit in the economy. It has information about credits, those who are borrowers, the performance of those loans, and it's for both consumers and businesses. So they just aggregate all those data from banks, from non-bank, from telcos, from insurance, all gamut of players in the credit industry. Submit their information to the credit bureau. The credit bureau organizes, use technologies to bring those data together and produce what we call credit report and credit scores. So lenders now have to access that information for every loan application they want to grant. So what does that do? it makes life easy for them. They can now lend with confidence because they have the information that they need. Two, they can lend at what we call risk-based pricing. If they perceive me as a riskier, borrower, my interest rate will be higher than yours. So it's not just going to be one interest rate for everyone. Right. And so you see that bringing down the level of non-performing loans in the economy. But much more is that it now enables them to give loans to consumers and SMEs. If you look at the last 4 or 5 years, you see significant jump in access to credit by individuals and by businesses. And the reason is because the bureaus are there to support them, to have information about the willingness to pay and the capacity to pay by those borrowers. It also helps them to be able to process so many transactions. You don't need to walk into your bank, any banking hall to process a loan today. Banks can process thousands of transactions in a day today because the credit bureau is there to give them data that they can use, using technology also on their own part to connect to the database of the credit bureau. So when you have all of these, what the credit reporting does is to stimulate access to credit, is to grow access to credit, especially for those who are always vulnerable and who also have exhibitions. And those are the small business owners and small businesses and consumers, me and you. So where you have credit reporting, like you have in Nigeria, you see that growth in the number of people who have access to credit. You see that growth in the number of small businesses that have access to credit. And
obviously it's impact on the economy.
Exactly. So you see that growth in you see that reduction in the level of non-performing loans. You see new products, coming from the lending institutions. And so you then see that the economy is becoming a credit economy rather than a cash-based economy. And if you don't have a credit-based economy, hardly can your economy grow. There's no economy in the world that is very successful and is growing that does not rely on credit. And there's no economy that is relying on credit that doesn't have robust credit reporting system. And that's what Nigeria has done. And that's what our contributions
are. We need to get to that point where we can get so many things without paying outrightly. That's another angle to look at. Very important, credit-based economy. Let's go back to the MSMEs again. Yeah. We always look at them. I saw graphics on air talking about their contribution to GDP and all that they contribute to growth. But the issue of finance is always one challenge. There was a time there was an argument that it was either some don't even have maybe like a business arrangement or a well thought out business plan. But someone saying no, it's not about the plan. It's not about the money. But how do credit bureau, or how can credit bureaus help address this very critical challenge of funding, basically with focus on MSMEs?
So the MSMEs remain the drivers of growth of the economy. 48%, your news said it.
Honestly.
In terms of employment rate, probably more than 50 or 60% of Nigerians are employed in MSMEs. In fact, the MSMEs constitute over 96% of the total number of companies we have in the country. In fact, what am I saying? 98% actually.
Yes, 98, yes.
Yes. So you need to be able to focus on them. We need to focus on them to ensure that they have access to credit. But they are the ones that are, starved of funding when it comes to access to credit. And we've talked around why that is so. So the way bureaus come is to see how can we help to mitigate that, challenges, to reduce those challenges. And that's what the bureau is out there to do. So can we enhance the access to structures that will enable banks to part with their funds and give to them? Can we help them to put their information together? They need credible information. They need creditable structure. They need to open accounts and patronize the banking system in the first place. Because most of the MSMEs are sole businesses. They are sole proprietorship. Over 80% of them are actually one-man businesses. Yeah. So most of them, all of them don't even have bank accounts. How do you have access to bank loans when you don't have bank accounts? That's not possible. That's why central bank keep on driving financial inclusion. Okay, so we have to encourage them to go in that direction. We have to encourage them to be very responsible in borrowing, to be very responsible in taking loans. What do you use your loans for? Okay, do you take a loan for working capital and then divert it for something else? If you do that, it will reflect in your credit report and your credit score, and then you not be able to have access to credit in the very, immediate future. So we have a lot of education that we have to do, and that's why we're engaging the BMOs that are, players in that sector, the LCCI, the NASME, the NASE. So we have a lot of programs for them for the rest of the year that will be teaching them, we will be exposing them to why they need to do this and build their capacity to be able to do that. What are the lenders looking for you to have a credit? How can you enable your organization to be able to provide such information? Okay, where are the loans? Who has what loans? And which of them will benefit you? So the rest of the year, we'll carry out as many as possible webinars and conferences and social media engagement to put the MSMEs in this direction and see how they can take advantage of all the funds that are available. The funds are there. The funds are really there. Intervention funds are there. Most of the, banks and financial institutions that submit data to us are looking for credible businesses to give support to in terms of access to funding. But then you really have to prepare yourself also for you to be able to access that fund. And that gap is what we're trying to bridge by letting you know these are things you have to do. And that will come through webinars, through seminars, through other engagement. By the 30th of this month, yes, we're going to be talking about, basic bookkeeping and creditworthiness. What's the relationship between the two? And we want to talk directly to MSMEs themselves. We want to talk directly, go to them and talk to them on that. So and that's just an example.
Yes, I understand. A lot has been expected then from you. So let's wrap up now because time is always fast spent. We never have enough time on television. What more should I'm looking at Nigeria becoming a credit-based society. How prepared are we? What more should we expect?
So so what I will be talking to Nigerians about is to have a way to check their credit report and their credit scores. You don't shoot yourself in the leg by not knowing what your credit status is. The same way you do your medical checkup is the same way you should do your credit checkup. You have an account you have opened 4 or 5 years down the line, you did abandon it, and then it has gone into debit, and you didn't know. And then suddenly you needed a loan, you apply for a loan, and somebody's flagging, oh, that account, you abandon it, it's now 20,000 debit. You can't give you a loan. No. Every Nigerian has opportunity to, access their credit report. In fact, it's free. You can get one free of charge from any of the bureaus. Just go to the website, you get it. And it's online, so you don't need to physically visit any of the credit bureaus. And CRC, like I said, even you can have it on your mobile. Just download CRC mobile, you'll see it. During COVID, one of the 3 bureaus even made it, the premium report were free for consumers. So you need to, that's the first thing I think I want to talk about, that Nigeria should take advantage of the fact that check yourself first of all, so that you know your status before you start applying for credit. That's the first thing I want to talk about. The second thing I want to talk about is now for MSMEs in particular to also get themselves structured such that they can have a checklist. There's always a checklist that financial institutions will look at before they can grant you loans. So you are able to, to go through that checklist, fulfill all the requirements, and then the loans are there for you. And then if you have borrowed, be a responsible borrower. Pay back your loans. For every day that you default in not repaying your loans is a minus for your credit score. And then they will haunt you. And if you are someone who is really paying your debt as at when due, it enhances your credit score, it enhances your chance of getting access to credit. Don't be surprised if tomorrow somebody is sending you SMS that say you are qualified for 40,000 naira loan, you are qualified for 100,000 naira loan. How do they know that? They've checked your credit status and they've known that you are a responsible borrower or you are a responsible account holder and that they can give you loans with little or no collateral security.
Well, it's a good way to leave it, Dr. Dule Pokuola. Thank you very much for your time. Managing Director, CEO, CRC, Credit Bureau Limited, and is also the chairman of the Credit Bureau Association of Nigeria, Siban. We really enjoyed having you in the studio. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
It's a pleasure being here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right.